Welcome everyone to the Goods & Co. podcast. My name is Isaac Matthews and I am your host. Here on the podcast, we share the stories of local businesses and artists in the Northwestern Ontario region of Canada, proudly supporting ventures owned by members of the LGBTQ, BIPOC, and women-led communities. Today's episode is brought to you by the new Woodside Bar, located in the Goods & Co. Market, downtown Thunder Bay, bringing you crafted cocktails and a curated wine and beer menu to suit all taste buds. Follow along on Instagram at the Woodside Bar. That again is at the Woodside Bar. Welcome you guys to today's episode of the Goods & Co. podcast. So excited to have you here. So today we are speaking with the creative team behind Goods & Co. Market. Of course, May, you've done so many things, including Craft Revival and this project as well. And you are very involved in the community, so everyone knows you and your face and your involvement. And we've also got Jordan here, and some people might not know Jordan as much. He's kind of the behind the scenes here. But today's the opportunity to get to know both of you guys. So why don't we start with maybe how you guys met, and then we'll kind of go into how this all started, I think.
I'll start.
Yeah.
Thanks, Isaac, and thanks for being the host. I have to start by saying that I'm just super grateful that you've taken this project on, because I could not do it without you. So so I'm May, and I'm from Thunder Bay. I've been a part of the arts and culture scene for the last 10 years or more. I come from a very artistic family, artistic background, with a passion in community. So lots of people know me from Craft Revival or events that I've hosted across the city and through the Waterfront District BIA as well. To kind of give a little bit of a background, when I started Craft Revival in 2014, I slowly built this community and connections. And then I'd say about 5 years ago, I started really dreaming up this idea of a permanent market space in our downtown core. And my partner and I love to travel. We love to check out markets everywhere we go. It just became a passion to kind of dive into that. I didn't really know the opportunity was ever going to come to fruition. I remember standing across the street from Eaton's building, right outside the Loop building, and talking to Beth from the Loop, and she was like, "You should do a market in Eaton's building." And I was like, "I totally should, and maybe I will." And then I guess I'll let Jordan talk a bit too, but we've met through the BIA. We're both board members. So we
What's
met
the
through
BIA
that.
for people who don't know?
The Waterfront District Business Improvement Area.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so we've worked together on the board. How else did we meet? I organized both of his sisters' weddings.
Oh.
So we know each other through that as well. I'll let Jordan talk a bit and tell us about himself.
Thanks, May. And thanks, Isaac. So my name's Jordan Calonego, and I've been all over the planet with different stuff, but I ended up moving back to Thunder Bay 10 years ago. I was born here, but and I was, prior to that, basically renovating old buildings in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, which is kind of crazy and off the beaten path a little bit.
Wow.
But ended up back here, and while I was like halfway between Asia and living here half the time and in Asia half the time, bought an old building downtown here in the Waterfront District, and then have gone through, I guess, probably somewhere between 20 and 30 renovation projects with tenants, and worked with them on like fixing up old spaces and making them cool again and new. We did Tomlin Restaurant, St. Paul Roastery, Prime Gelato.
Oh,
We
great.
go through a list of stuff, but some law firms now. We started off with like bands and artists and place to hang out at midnight when you go to the bar, and then now it's like there's we have law firm tenants and everything. But so this building here, that's the reason why we're talking about all this, but the Eaton's building in Thunder Bay was built in 1938. Over 6 months, like April, if you're familiar with the weather in Thunder Bay, April demo, broke ground to pour foundations and stuff, and then put up a building, and then opened October 15th the same year. So like a 6 month span build a 120,000 square foot building in 1938. And it was basically the department store for Northwestern Ontario, because there wasn't anything in Northwestern Ontario at the time.
Was anything here
that was
before?
This size? There was a couple smaller buildings and stuff, but they were demolished. But so I got involved with this, looking at this old building and trying to brainstorm ways to fix it and fix the downtown and do stuff that would get people, you know, to use old assets and, you know, like kind of change the city a little bit. But anyway, so I had this idea, and May worked on both my sister's weddings in a former career she was working in, and we had some involvement behind the scenes on another project together way back, but kind of unbeknownst to her, but it's a long story. Anyway, but one of the first, yeah, I know. So one of the first weddings that she did at this place she was working at was my little sister, and then a year later my other little sister got married there, and they both had like these amazing weddings, and May killed it, and it's fantastic and amazing. So then we sort of become friends a little bit and get to know each other, and then end up on the Waterfront BIA board together and work together on that. And then I'm looking at this building and trying to, you know, figure out how to fix something that's really old and get people in it, and like highest best use, get you know, people in to use an old building again. But
and at the same time, I was looking at other buildings. So I looked at the Odeon at one point. I went and got my family to look through that, like just check out that building. And I was brainstorming other spaces that potentially could be it. This building just always seemed like it wasn't an option because of the previous owners, hard to kind of reach, hard to kind of get a hold of.
Right.
And then there was just lots of different things happening in the building that it was just made it really difficult.
Yeah, and if you've never walked through this building before, it looks massive. So I could see that being intimidating too, of just like what's possibly in that, especially if it hasn't been really utilized for so long.
Like, where would you start?
Knows?
Where do you start?
Yeah, when I looked at this, because the Def Sup was in the basement, definitely Superior Art Gallery, and they had a great little space in the basement for a gallery, and they'd have events and, like, you know, go there and have a beer and look at art and stuff, and it was really cool. But you walk around the building and start figuring out the size of it, and if you tried to redo flooring or if you tried to paint, like if you, for anybody that's not familiar with this building, so I was saying it was built in 1938, but that's 2/3 of it. And then 72, 3, 4, there was an addition put on. So the piece that we're sitting in, was built over 3 years, and it's half the size of the initial building that was built in 6 months.
Right.
My like, there's another story about you, Isaac, and your family, but my family tie into this is that my grandfather demolished the buildings that this building sits on, and then did all the earth moving and some of the like preliminary work prior to pouring concrete and stuff as a contractor in the 70s. But anyway, so if you think of a house, right? So like an average house is, say, 2,000 square feet. So this building's 185,000 square feet. So take your house, you know, times 90 something. You want to redo a kitchen, or you want to redo your floors, and then, you know, add 2 zeros to it. So I looked at this and I'm like, this is really big. It's kind of like it's a, you know, big spicy meatball as far as like a project goes. But we figured out some material stuff and how
Such an Italian thing.
Yeah, thanks.
Wow.
But cut that part. But you basically like work backwards and figure out what this was like in the beginning and what was cool about it. So we find these terrazzo floors, and we find these nice columns, and we find all this stuff. And then, but over 2 years, so go to Def Sup, and then I'm brainstorming, like, how could I fix this building? Is there a way to do that? And then there's all this glazing. So there's all this glass down Red River Road and all these entrances on Red River Road that were set up for a department store.
Right.
And like, department stores are dead. Obviously you can't do a department store. You can't do those types of uses. And then like Eureka, we need market space down here. So there's another, like, it's not an operator, but there's another option for the market. It didn't work. Yeah. And it wouldn't have worked for a few reasons. But
so you had the idea of a market even before
independently, totally, like concurrently,
amazing.
Independently, we both had this idea. So our communication on this, she's on her own trying to figure out how to do this. And then I go to her and I'm like, hey, May, I have this idea. Would you ever think of expanding the craft revival and doing something? And she's like, well, I've actually been working on that for years. And here's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, that's exactly
That's
what I was
amazing.
thinking. And she's like,
Yeah.
well, I actually want to do it in this building. She's trying to, like, at the time, she's like, so this is a weird analogy, but like a landlord tenant and development relationship is kind of like, it's like any other relationship. So you're talking and you're trying to know the other party and everything.
Yeah, right.
So she's had all this built up ideas and thoughts and everything for years about this space
Yeah.
and how to do something really cool in it. And I had similar ones, but I didn't have like the highest profile part of the building is where Goods & Co is going. But I didn't have it figured out. And then I'm trying to pitch her thinking like, there's no way this is going to work. There's no way that she's going to want to do this. There's no way she's going to want to jump in on this. And then she's like, she's already thought of all this and gone through it and vetted it all. And it's pretty serendipitous, but
Kidding.
It basically makes the whole project work. So the weird thing, so the market is the vast majority of the frontage that people would see of the building. So anything in like there's architecture, buildings, all that. It's really important, the outside, what it looks like, and then like how it feels inside in the space. And on the outside, like there's this issue that we have that this building's been underutilized for 24 years.
Right.
During that period, you have basically a city block. It's 1.4 something acres, 1.5 acres of land, 3 stories, very underutilized. So it's like there's like a dark cloud in one part of the downtown that's not.
You just kind of block it out.
Yeah,
like you like
It's
walk down
true,
the
though.
street and you just
Doesn't
like you have like a blinder. You just forget about
And
it.
for years.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
years.
Past 10 years.
Yeah.
So you go as huge as this market is and everything. It's 10% of the gross square footage of the whole building.
Wow.
But it feels like it's like 75% of it because when you walk past it, when you see the windows, when it's like as I envision it full of people.
Yeah.
And May does too, but it's basically having this it's like the beachhead to fixing this building, which is kind of the beachhead to fixing the downtown and continuing. It's like a cascade of good projects that have happened down here. But so since I mean, I'm really excited about it. She's really excited about it. We're doing this together. We're a team. There's like you know, I've got a crew that do some of the work, but May's got her own contractor on her fit out component with it. But it's basically.
It's a wild process. It's
crazy.
Like I mean, Jordan's totally done this a million times, so he's used to a lot of it. I've never done this. I've never built something from the ground up. I've never created a brand that never existed. You know, I've dealing with architects, dealing with contractors, trying to fill a space during a pandemic. You know, that's been really exciting too. And the response so far has been amazing and totally surprising because there's moments where you feel like, is this even going to work? Am I even going to make this happen? Is anyone going to be interested? And then you have these highs of being like, this is the best. Like, you know, it's just crazy. It's a roller coaster of emotions. And it's really exciting. And I'm like immediately in love with the process of doing this, even though I have days where I yell at Jordan and
Sure, I can imagine.
Come in and I'm like, I'm mad today. But it's been really fun.
So we're this is hilarious. If you went from today and went backwards, we're like tied at the hip on this project for like it's like 18 months, I think, ballpark.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're like nobody's been in here. There's nothing moving.
Yeah.
Like, you know, May's 100% involved with this, but her contractor hasn't even started work. Like sometime next week, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's 18 months into this project. So this is like a 2.5 year project, you know, to get like totally all the bugs out and everything else. But
it's one of those many years for an overnight success kind of thing.
I envisioned it happening in 6 months. I was like, okay, I left my last job in March and I was like, open by December, no problem. Like, but then the pandemic happened, so
we're I mean the really cool thing when people get in here, the stuff that the demos exposed and the stuff that May's been working with Sean Serino from Serino Architects, and then Heather Cranston and but Pulp and Paper. Pulp and Paper. So she's got this fantastic design team and like very, very smart people that are super competent that come up with like brilliant ideas. And then the base bones of the building and the base bones of the materials that were involved are so high quality and well done so long ago that you wouldn't do this anymore. But it's allowed, like, her design team has worked with all the stuff that's existing. We've been able to salvage probably like 75% of the materials and stuff that are there, and then work, like, do new stuff on top of it. But
that was really important, I think, to both of us, was trying to keep the original building as much as possible. So
and even beyond the building itself, even the branding, I know you've mentioned that, like, you're very consciously trying to weave in the old vibe of the Eaton Center and the department store, like that era of sales and whatnot.
I mean, I think we're trying to, I mean, it's going to be a new, fresh space with, you know, its own vibe, but I think the main point is to bring back what Eaton's brought to the downtown, and that was people and, you know, energy and just like excitement again. You know, like, it was such a huge, iconic space for the city. You know, I think that even with I think it had over 100 employees at one point. It's super nostalgic for Thunder Bay, the Eaton Center, and I was even cool enough to get invited into the Eaton's employee Facebook group. So I've reached a next level.
Wow.
But yeah, no, I think it's it's really cool, and it's just exciting to see this space come to life again, and to be part of it. I'm super grateful, and yeah, we're excited.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you mentioned kind of COVID had a little bit of a hand in what's going on in terms of the development. Has it been significantly more difficult, do you think, because of what's been happening?
I mean, on my end, in terms of
go like the tenant stuff.
So like with actually getting vendors in the space. So the market itself will have about 30 permanent storefront spaces. So I've been, you know, talking to a lot of different businesses, you know, ranging from retail to bakeries to coffee shops to flower shops to like
art. There's lots of art,
like all these different types of businesses, and trying to really curate a really cool mix in the space, right? And so I'm trying to work with this idea of what I want and like what I see for the space, but then I'm also working with what I'm getting from people and who's contacting me.
Of course.
And it's funny, I looked at a list of my original like tenant list at I don't know, a year ago.
Yeah.
And it's just completely different, like, because things have changed so much. So the people that were on board, you know, things come up, and financially, it's been a really hard year for a lot of businesses, and that's been a huge thing. And people deciding to have babies.
Yeah. So the crazy thing is that the tenant side, like what's feeding Maelyn being able to commit to this and do all this, she's faced more difficulties with pregnancies than with COVID, I think. On my side, like we've had
so it's COVID babies.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
It's like a second derivative of
it's a real
COVID.
thing.
But so we've had a full lockdown. So lay everybody off, send them home. Right. Bring them back. Have a scare. So you have 1 or 2 degrees away, somebody that's working here, safe distanced, all this kind of stuff. Like we were doing on this project, we were like into teams of 2 people, safely distanced in early February, which is like a month ahead of full lockdown, March 12th or 13th last year, just for a few reasons. But anyway, like we've been very ahead of the curve on all this stuff. But then we had a manager that, you know, his child got COVID, and then you got to lock everybody down. All these kind of delays with that. There's material shortages right now, so
big time.
You have to plan ahead months more than you normally would on things like that. But the border closure, you know, different stuff. But the biggest one though is the tenant thing. So you have people that have anxiety or fear due to the pandemic, or they're not sure when things are going to open up. And I think between like my side, May's side, we're good. When you get to the tenants, there's some that have had some trepidation, I guess.
Yeah.
But the bigger one is pregnancy. So you have like literally people that their life's changing.
It's wild. Wild.
But she's got awesome tenants and awesome people.
Yeah, and it's all kind of worked out. You know, you have to trust in the process, I think, and that's what I've had to do over this time, is just trust that it's all going to work out okay. Otherwise, I'll just have a heart attack at some point.
Thank you everyone so much for joining us for this episode of the Goods & Co podcast. Of course, this was part 1 of a 2-part series with Jordan and May, so I encourage you to go find episode 2 and learn more about the creation of this incredible project. We have several local entrepreneurs lined up for this season of the Goods & Co podcast, so make sure to subscribe and be notified when new episodes are released. Once again, this episode was brought to you by the new Woodside Bar opening this fall inside the Goods & Co Market downtown Thunder Bay, serving up curated cocktails, delicious wines, and craft beers. Follow along on Instagram at The Woodside Bar. That handle again is at The Woodside Bar.